Good afternoon, you guys. It's February something, I don't even know, but it's beginning of February in there somewhere. So I'm on my way back to Saskatoon. You know that I bounce around between a lot of locations. You guys know I live on the road. That hasn't changed. Ashton is not with me this time. Oh yeah, look at that. My windshield wipers, they do work. But in the last video, or a couple videos ago now, I guess it was, remember when we were in those whiteout conditions? Everyone's like, man, Mike, how come you don't have your windshield wiper on? And there's a couple of reasons. One is when I was in those whiteout conditions, the windshield wiper actually doesn't do me any good. I can't see nothing. Not because of the windshield wiper, but because of the blowing snow. Though where my windshield wiper would have been handy is when I was just circling the dealership waiting for Ashton, and you're going super slow. Like if you get down to that 10 kilometers, then the snow is melting on. But once you get up to 50 or over, it's just blowing off. So that's the reason why. And then they were all iced up. And, you know, fun times had by all. But anyways, we don't have the nicest road conditions here today. We got good visibility for the most part, yes. But it's blowing wind, it's blowing snow across the highway, and it's sticking. We got a temperature outside is plus 2 degrees Celsius. I know. It was minus 33 degrees Celsius a couple days ago. That's weather in Saskatchewan. Goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down, and so on and so forth. But we got slush on the road. And probably the next worst thing from zero visibility would be slush. I would rather drive on ice any day, pure ice any day of the week, than if you're driving in really slushy conditions. Now, these conditions aren't bad because we have a trail in the middle as of current right now. But when we get into a little bit heavier slush, where you get a lot more white and snow on the road, if you get your wheels into that slush, you know what's going to happen to you. You actually lose full control of your steering, and you're just going to start sliding one way or the other. You can take you ditch side, or it can take you to the opposing lane side. I would much rather slide ditch side, guaranteed, because you don't want to go sliding into oncoming traffic. The best thing you can do is if you do hit some slush and it starts pulling you in, and obviously you're trying to steer out of it, you obviously want to get braking, you want to get slowing down. But if you're going to go in the ditch, don't try and counter. Just find a good location and steer yourself right down there. It's a lot better if you be in the ditch controlled than you're out of control going in the ditch, because the last thing you want to do is roll your vehicle. Now, there was an individual in a vehicle ahead of me, and that SUV, an all-wheel drive SUV, it was a full size, it was a big Jeep, was going just about sideways down the slush. You can see these tracks right there. Yeah, you can see them. If you get in that slush, it'll pull you. And she managed to correct it and get pulled back out. But I was watching the whole time as I was behind her. I'm like, she's gone. She's gone. No, she got it. See these tracks again? And then it scoots way off into the opposing lane. So that's the most dangerous, is you go into the opposing lane. That's worse. So that is one of the reasons why Mike actually really likes his large trucks. Okay, Mike's a big truck kind of guy, not just because I require a lot of it, whether I'm pulling stuff that I should really be using a semi-truck for, but diesels, especially big diesels. I'm not talking like little 3-liter diesels in your half ton. I'm talking like 3/4 ton, 1 ton diesel engines in your trucks. They're heavier on the front end. So heavier on the front end is good, which means it takes more slush to make that front end slide and move and pull you, right? And then I prefer to drive my work truck because I have a 200-gallon slip tank in the back full of fuel all the time. Plus I've got extra tools and so on and so forth. So I'm carrying a whole pile more weight, just about another ton of weight in the back of my truck. So I would much prefer to have my work truck on any given day if there is bad roads. See this slush right now? You can kind of hear it. Whoa, it can even pull me around. So I'm very happy that I do not have an SUV right now, because I'm a truck kind of guy. And then if you do hit the ditch with the truck, you got a lot more clearance, a lot less likely you're going to break something, and you have a pretty good receiver hitch on the back. You just got to find another neighbor, or maybe not a neighbor, but a passerby, flag him down and he'll yard you right out of that ditch and you're good to go. Or if you're like me, you're always the passerby and pulling a lot of people out of the ditches. So Mike, why are you going to Saskatoon? Why do you live your life on the road? That's actually a really good question. So I bounce around. I pretty much hang my boots in Swift. I bounce around between South Farm, North Farm on a weekly basis, and there's about 500 or 600 kilometers between the two farm locations. So that adds up a lot of time. And then Ashton is normally in Swift, and obviously if I'm back home in the South Farm, then obviously I want to get back up to see her. But right now she's spending some time up there with her family in Saskatoon, and that's fine. So now I find myself going to Saskatoon to go see my son and Ashton. Oh, don't worry, she'll be coming back. But she's getting some good quality time hanging in there with her family, so I'm pretty happy about that. The windshield wipers are going down pretty steady, and that's because it is steadily raining. It's not normally a good sign if it's raining and it's floating around that 0 to 2 degrees. Typically that is a prime recipe for disastrous roads, but they're pretty good actually right now because they've got quite a bit of salt on them, and we're kind of ahead of the storm, if you would say that, because the wind hasn't blown all the snow across it to stick it yet. But speaking of snow and slush, I wanted to clarify. I think there a minute or two back I said, you know, you want to hit your brakes and slow down. What I should have said is you don't want to hit your brakes. Okay, if you're caught in slush, this is my experience talking, but you do want to slow down. So I would rephrase that and say, take your foot off the gas pedal and try and steer yourself into a mild direction, obviously preferably back on the road, and let yourself slow down naturally if you can. If you hit your brakes and you hit them a little too hard, yes, I know we got anti-lock brakes and all that fun stuff, it's probably just going to continue your slide, okay? For example, if you're traveling 20 to 50 kilometers an hour, you can punch through slush 3-4 inches thick all day, no problem. You'd be in full control. You hit that same slush doing, I don't know, 100 kilometers an hour, you're going to be fully out of control very quickly. So it's just all a matter of getting yourself slowed down and staying on the road long enough to do it. Does that help? I hope so. Also, let's talk about bad roads. Like I know, Ashton and I in Chapel, we got caught out in a blizzard there quite a few videos ago now, I guess it was. And so that does happen. Welcome to Saskatchewan. The weather can change in 5 minutes, even from what is predicted. But unfortunately, there has been people have died due to their, I don't know, they can't see, they pull over, or maybe they go in the ditch, and they're like, you know what? I know this area. I know that my neighbor is only down the road like a half a mile, quarter mile. I know he's there. I know where I am. I know. Even though you might know the area very well, you might be very experienced with the area, you only got to go a quarter mile, half a mile, not very far, maybe even 300 feet, whatever it might be, just stay with your vehicle. I can't stress that enough. I've seen and read many articles where people got stuck in the snow and they're like, well, they're going to walk to the neighbor's house in the blizzard, they know exactly where it is, or maybe they just want to stay along the road but nobody comes and then they just freeze to death out there. A couple days later, everybody finds each other. That's very sad. And we live in a day and age now where we all have phones. You can drop a Google pin, send it to your friends and say, hey, I'm stuck here. When it's safe, come pick me up. Or when you can see, come pick me up, or whatever it might be. If you're in your vehicle, throw on your heated seat. If you're stuck, whatever it might be, throw on your heated seat, watch some YouTube videos, listen to some tunes, and wait out the storm, I guess. Well, my guy rolled. My vehicle is not runnable. Well, at least if, I don't know, maybe if it's upside down, then you're just in a bad situation altogether, I guess. But as long as it's upright and it's deemed safe enough, at least you're out of the wind. because normally it's going to be like a minus 40 or 50 wind chill that's come with that, and it's that wind chill that's going to get you every time. You're not going to make it very far. Our instincts are to go with the storm. It's our natural instinct. It's easy to get disorientated out there, okay? So my recommendation is always to stay with your vehicle. We can find your vehicle in a day or so, but it's a lot harder to find you once you've left the vehicle. Also, that brings me to another point, and I know I've said this before in another video or two, but especially when you're out in the prairies during the winter and our weather can change on a whim, always go prepared. Now, it's easy to not check the weather and sometimes forget, like I did when I was in Saskatoon, and I was only 20 minutes away from where I wanted to go, so I wasn't too worried about it. But especially if you're going to go on a long road trip, always carry your winter gear with you, always carry some food with you, some snacks, something that's not perishable, so that way if you hit the ditch and you're going to spend a day or so out there until this weather goes by, make sure that you have something that you can eat, some water to drink, and most importantly, some candles or something. Because if your vehicle did roll and yeah, you are now without any power, any energy, any heat, I'm staying with my vehicle. I don't care whether it's upside down, unless there's literally gasoline dripping on it and I'm worried about a fire or something like that. I'm staying with my vehicle because at least I can be out of the wind. And then I'm going to be digging out my candles that I have, and I'm going to have a little candle party in there to try to keep some heat in that cab, okay? That's a lot better than venturing out in the middle of a whiteout blizzard and freezing to death in about 20 minutes. Now you can see that our roads are actually starting to change from slush to more snow as it's getting colder outside. So remember, it was +2 when we left, then it started raining, then it went down to 0. Current temperature is -7. Now, Saskatoon, I think it's about -15, so it's going to keep getting colder as we go. So you guys know that Mike's on the road, and when you're on the road, you kind of have a bad habit, or I have a bad habit anyway, of pulling into drive-thrus. You know, grabbing a coffee and grabbing something to munch on, you know, whatever it might be. And it's a terrible habit, to be quite honest with you. But anyways, I was in the drive-thru Tim Hortons, and just ordered a soup and a sandwich, you know, nothing too serious. But it was going to take a little bit too long, and they're like, and that's fine. They're like, just pull around front, sir, and we'll just bring it out to you. Okay, no big deal. That's what I did, pull around front. Let's do some tunes. So, young lady, she brings out the Timmies, and she's like, there you go, sir. Have yourself a great day and a very safe travels while you're driving. And I was like, you too! Classic Brian Regan move. Oh, man. I don't know if you guys listen too much of Brian Regan, but he's one of my all-time favorite comedians. He's very clean. And I kind of wanted to continue saying, yeah, you too! If you're driving today sometime, make sure you drive safely. Going places. Anyways, just had to bring that up. I say that all the time, you know, whether getting out of a taxi cab or getting on an airline, like who hasn't scanned the ticket at the front counter and they're like, all right, sir, thank you very much, have a safe flight. You too. If you're flying sometime, whenever you want to fly, make sure you have a safe flight. So anyways, good old facepalm moments. But anyways, back on the road. So as we're driving here, you see how the, I don't know how this is going to work. See how it looks wet there in those lines? Well, it's not wet. So once it gets cold enough and the wind blows across the highway long enough, it will glaze that. So that little bit of shininess is actually called black ice. So black ice, which can also catch a lot of people off guard, is when you can't see any white snow, you can't see everything looks fine. It looks like pavement, but there's a very, very thin sheet of ice called black ice. And so that's kind of what we're working with now. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some places like right here where it's wet. You see the puddles. It's been well salted. That's awesome. So we're kind of fluctuating between well salted and black ice, which means that it's just been glazed over with some ice and it's hard to identify. So current temperature is -11, and salt, I think they only use salt down to like -20. Maybe it's only -15. But anyways, once it gets too cold, the salt will no longer actually really be effective anymore. It's just too cold. So then they'll resort to sand, or they'll just leave it. So yeah, and I guess we do road salt or highways up here. I guess if that's new to you, they salt for ice. But the problem is when you get wind and it blows snow across and sticks to that nice wet substance on the highway and creates worse roads. So it's kind of a catch-22. I feel bad for the highway guys to have to make that decision. That would not be an easy decision to make, but they definitely do the best that they can do. Well, we're getting closer to Saskatoon. We're on double lane right now. Current temperature is -14, so it's still cooling down a little bit. There's still a little bit of black ice under here. If I was to stomp on the brakes, we would probably slide just a little bit. Black ice can also be formed, you guys, from the heat of traffic, like tires. Lots of times, this lane, for example, that's cleared out. Just gonna watch this semi here. Choose to pull in. With the mixture of salt and melts on this lane, and then it creates some black ice. And now with that said, I'm going to let you guys go. So that's kind of just of kind of some do's and some don'ts in the prairies when driving. And you guys probably have a few questions like, well, Mike, why don't you just stay home, buddy? Why do you got to drive so much? It's my job. It's the life I've chosen. Your farm is kind of split up between 600 kilometers. There's going to be lots of driving. And when you live out in the prairies, you guys, you got to remember, you can drive 100 miles before you even get to your closest Walmart or McDonald's. Like, you can drive and drive and drive and drive and drive and drive and drive before you get anywhere. So we don't live in a very populated area of Canada. There's only like 33 or 35 million people in Canada, and most of that is in Ontario, Quebec, with a little bit over there in British Columbia and Alberta. But the prairies, Manitoba and Saskatchewan, are very, very sparsely populated. Like, there's only a population of like 1.1 million people, and the province of Saskatchewan is quite massive. So that kind of puts that in perspective for you. And just like that, there's the Saskatoon Shine sign to your right. And we're here, so I'm gonna let you guys go. And obviously, colder temperatures equal better roads. The colder it is, the better the road's gonna be. Your worst roads are always gonna be right around 0 degrees during the winter anyways. All right, guys, thanks for following along, and have yourself a good one. Adios.